the great hall of the Dravox Empire was filled with warriors, nobles, and commanders. Their armor shone under the crystal lights, their sharp eyes focused on the tall throne where the alien king sat. His crown of silver ridges gave him an aura of power, and his voice was always feared across the stars. But today, whispers moved through the hall like a storm. Beside the throne stood his daughter, Lyra. She was slender, her frame smaller than others of her kind. Her people, the Dravox, were known for strength, heavy armor, and fearless hearts. Yet Lyra was different. She had never won a duel, never commanded respect, and never carried the pride of her race. To the warriors in the hall, she was a weakness, a crack in the king's mighty armor. The king rose. His deep voice silenced the murmurs. "Today," he said, "our empire binds itself to humanity. Their soldiers are not like ours, but they are clever. They are bold. To show our trust, I will give my daughter, Lyra, to one of them. She will live among humans." The hall stirred. Some sneered, others laughed softly. To them, it sounded less like a gift and more like the king was ridding himself of a burden. From the back of the hall, a human stepped forward. His name was Tamash, a soldier from Earth. Unlike the towering Dravox, he looked plain, his armor light, his body unremarkable. Yet there was a calm strength in his eyes. He bowed, not with fear, but with steady respect. "I accept," Tamash said simply. The hall erupted in whispers again. The idea was laughable, a weak princess given to a human who seemed ordinary at best. Warriors smirked, certain that this union would lead to nothing. But the king only nodded. Lyra's heart pounded in her chest. She kept her eyes lowered, ashamed of being treated like an object, ashamed that her father saw her as nothing more than a tool for an alliance. She wanted to protest, to scream that she was more than this. But when her gaze lifted and met Tamash's, something stopped her. His eyes did not mock her. They did not see weakness. They were steady, patient, like he had already chosen to believe in her. The following days were confusing for Lyra. She left the crystal palaces of her people and traveled with Tamash to a human outpost on a faraway planet. The outpost was simple compared to her father's empire: steel walls, dusty grounds, soldiers moving in tight formations. Humans were not as tall or as strong as the Dravox, yet they carried themselves with confidence, as if they knew their minds were sharper than their bodies. At first, Lyra felt lost. She did not understand human customs. She sat quietly during meals while humans laughed and shared stories. When training began, she struggled. Her hands shook when she held human weapons, and her feet stumbled in their drills. She felt the eyes of other soldiers on her, judging, just as her own people had. But Tamash never raised his voice. He never called her weak. Instead, he spoke to her with calm words. "Your people value power," he told her. "But strength is not only in muscle. Strength is also in patience, in focus, in the will to stand when others expect you to fall." Lyra listened, though doubt still clung to her heart. Each day, Tamash trained beside her. He showed her how to breathe, how to move with balance, how to wait for the right moment instead of rushing. He never pushed too hard, but he never let her quit. One evening, after many failed attempts at sparring, Lyra sat on the edge of the training ground. The sun dipped low, painting the sky with gold. She buried her face in her hands. "I will never be like them," she whispered. Tamash sat beside her. "You don't need to be like them," he said. "You only need to be you. But stronger, braver, step by step." For a long moment, Lyra was silent. No one had ever spoken to her like that, not her father, not her tutors, not her people. She felt a small spark in her chest, faint but real. Far away, in his empire, the alien king heard reports from his messengers. They told him that his daughter was struggling but had not given up. The king frowned. To him, such small progress was meaningless. He believed humans were only keeping her alive out of pity. He dismissed the news and turned his attention back to war plans. But on the human outpost, something was slowly changing. Though Lyra still stumbled, though she still felt unsure, she was beginning to see herself through Tamash's eyes. Not as a failure. Not as a burden. But as someone who could become more. And for the first time in her life, she wondered if her future was not already written. The human outpost was always alive with sound. The clang of metal, the echo of marching boots, the low hum of machines. It was a place built for constant work and training. For Lyra, every day felt strange. She was used to crystal towers, silent guards, and the strict traditions of her people. Here, humans spoke freely, laughed loudly, and questioned orders when they thought it necessary. It unsettled her, but it also fascinated her. The soldiers treated her with mixed feelings. Some were polite, offering nods of respect. Others whispered behind her back. "She's the alien king's weakling," one muttered. "She won't last a month," another said. Lyra heard the words, though they were never spoken directly to her face. Each whisper pierced her heart, just like the voices of her people back in the Empire. She wanted to shrink, to disappear, but every time she thought of leaving, Tamash's voice came back to her mind. Strength is not only in muscle. It is in patience. It is in the will to stand. So, she stood. Training was harder than anything Lyra had faced before. Human drills demanded speed and precision. She stumbled on the obstacle courses. Her aim with human rifles was poor. Even her balance failed her when she tried hand-to-hand combat. Many times she fell flat on the ground, dust coating her clothes while other soldiers groaned in annoyance. But Tamash never groaned. He was always there, offering a hand to help her up. "You learn when you fall," he said quietly. "The ones who rise again are the ones who win." Slowly, Tamash began to adjust her training. Instead of forcing her into the same drills as the humans, he taught her step by step. He showed her how to breathe before aiming, how to let her sharp alien senses guide her eyes. He taught her to focus not on the weight of the weapon but on the stillness of her mind. At first, she thought his methods were foolish. But one morning, during target practice, she took a long breath, ignored the noise around her, and fired. The shot hit the center of the mark. The soldiers nearby turned in surprise. Lyra's own eyes widened. For the first time, she had succeeded. Tamash only smiled. "See? Not weak. Just learning." Life in the outpost was not only training. In the evenings, soldiers gathered in the mess hall. They shared stories of their homes, laughed about their struggles, and sometimes sang old songs of Earth. At first, Lyra sat in silence, keeping her distance. She did not understand why they wasted time with such things. But over time, she began to listen more carefully. She learned about rivers that sparkled in the sunlight, about families waiting on distant planets, about childhood games humans played before they became soldiers. Their stories painted pictures in her mind that felt warm and alive. One evening, a young soldier asked her, "What was your home like, princess?" Lyra froze. She had never spoken openly about herself before. Everyone always judged her. But when she looked around, she saw only curious eyes. Not mocking, not harsh, just curious. "My home," she began softly. It was filled with tall towers of crystal. They shone under the moons. But inside, it was cold. Silence. Always silence. The soldiers grew quiet, listening. For the first time, Lyra's words mattered. That night, when she returned to her small quarters, she realized she no longer felt invisible. Still, doubts remained. In private, Lyra often questioned herself. Why had her father sent her away? Was she truly nothing more than a pawn in his game of power? When she looked in the mirror, she still saw weakness. One night, unable to sleep, she walked out to the training grounds. Tomasz was there, practicing alone. His movements were slow, controlled, each strike of his staff deliberate. "You never rest?" Lyra asked softly. He turned, a small smile on his face. "Rest comes after effort. Why are you awake?" "I keep wondering if I belong here," she admitted. "My people never saw me as strong. And the humans, they do not trust me." Tomasz lowered his staff and walked closer. His voice was calm. "Do you think I was born strong? No, I was born like everyone else. Weak, small, untrained. But I kept standing. That is the only difference." His words stayed in her heart. For the first time, Lyra allowed herself to imagine a different future, one not controlled by her father's judgment or her people's scorn. Days turned into weeks. Slowly, her hands grew steadier. Her steps more sure. She still failed often, but each failure hurt less, because she no longer saw it as the end. Instead, it was part of her climb. The whispers among the soldiers began to shift. Some still doubted her, but others started to nod with quiet respect. They saw her practicing long after training ended, refusing to give up. Far away, in the Dravox Palace, the alien king received reports again. His advisors told him his daughter was training hard. Some claimed she was showing progress. But the king only waved his hand. "She is weak. No training will change that," he said. But in the human outpost, change was already blooming. And though Lyra did not yet know it, the spark inside her was growing into a flame, one that would soon burn brighter than anyone expected. The human outpost never truly slept. Even at night, lights glowed across the walls, guards patrolled, and machines hummed softly. For Lyra, the days blended into a rhythm of training, listening, and trying again. She still failed often, but now she understood what Tomasz had said: strength was in standing up after every fall. Yet she had never been tested outside drills. The training grounds were safe. Mistakes there brought nothing worse than bruises and shame. But beyond the outpost walls, danger was real. That danger arrived sooner than anyone expected. One gray morning, alarms rang through the base. Sirens wailed, soldiers rushed to their posts, and the calm of routine shattered in seconds. A group of raiders, mercenaries from a nearby system, had attacked a supply convoy. The humans scrambled to send reinforcements. Lyra watched the soldiers gear up. Her heart pounded. She was not ordered to join, no one trusted her with real missions yet. But when Tomasz turned to her, he did not speak like the others. "Come with me," he said. Her eyes widened. "Me? But you've trained long enough to stand," Tomasz interrupted. "I trust you." The words echoed in her chest. Trust. No one had ever spoken that word to her before. She nodded quickly, afraid her courage would vanish if she waited. The ride to the convoy site was tense. The transport shook as it crossed rough ground, soldiers gripping their weapons tightly. Lyra sat between them, her mind filled with Tomasz's lessons. Breathe. Focus. Wait for the right moment. When the transport stopped, smoke already filled the sky. The convoy had been ambushed in a narrow valley, trucks overturned, crates scattered. Human soldiers fought behind cover as raiders pressed closer. "Move," Tomasz ordered, leading his squad into the fight. Blaster fire lit the air. Lyra's hands shook as she gripped her rifle. Every instinct told her to hide, to stay low. She ducked behind a broken crate, fear flooding her chest. Then she heard it, a human soldier crying out. He was pinned behind a truck, a raider closing in with a blade. Lyra froze. Her father's voice echoed in her memory, "You are weak. You will always be weak." But Tamash's voice rose louder in her heart, "Strength is in standing." Without thinking, she leapt from cover. Her rifle rose, her hands steadier than ever before. She aimed, remembered to breathe, and fired. The shot struck true. The raider fell before he reached the soldier. For a moment, the battlefield noise faded in Lyra's ears. She had done it. She had saved someone. The fight raged on. Again and again, Lyra remembered Tamash's lessons. She moved with focus, not panic. She watched carefully, striking when the chance appeared. She was not perfect, her shots missed often, but she no longer froze in fear. Each step she took was one she never believed possible. By the time reinforcements arrived, the raiders were retreating. The convoy was battered but safe. Soldiers cheered, slapping each other's shoulders. One of them turned to Lyra, his voice surprised. "You saved me back there." Lyra blinked. The soldier was smiling, gratitude in his eyes. For the first time in her life, someone thanked her for her strength. On the way back to the outpost, Lyra sat quietly, her rifle resting on her knees. Her hands still trembled, but not from fear. It was something else, something new. Pride. Tamash sat across from her, watching. A small smile tugged at his lips. "You did well," he said simply. Lyra lowered her eyes. I only followed what you taught me." "And now you know you can," Tamash replied. "The lesson is yours now, not mine." His words warmed her more than the cheer of victory. For the first time, she felt a fire inside her that could not be easily put out. News of the skirmish spread quickly. At first, whispers carried disbelief: the weak alien princess had fought. But the reports were clear: Lyra had acted with courage, even saving a soldier's life. Some scoffed, claiming it was luck. Others shook their heads, refusing to believe. But a few began to wonder if the human soldier had truly found something hidden in her. Back in the Empire, the alien king also heard the news. His advisors spoke carefully, reporting that Lyra had fought in battle and shown bravery. The king laughed bitterly. "She may have fired a weapon once," he said, "but that does not make her a warrior. Do not waste my time with fairy tales." He dismissed the matter, unwilling to believe that the daughter he had given away could surprise him. But far from his throne, Lyra stood in the training grounds again, her rifle steady in her hands. The spark inside her burned brighter now. She knew she was still far from a true warrior, but for the first time, she believed she could become one. That night, she stood under the stars outside the outpost. The sky stretched endlessly, filled with light. For years she had thought her life was already decided, written in weakness. But now, she saw something different. Her story was only beginning. The human outpost had returned to its rhythm, but something had changed. Lyra was no longer the silent figure who stood at the edge of the training fields. Soldiers now nodded when she passed. Some even greeted her with respect. They had seen her in the convoy battle, they knew she had stood her ground. For Lyra, the memory of that day still burned in her chest. Fear had not vanished, but she had faced it, and in doing so, she had found something new inside herself. But she did not yet know that her true test was coming. Beyond the outpost, war was brewing. The Zeroth, a rival alien race, had grown bold. They were taller and stronger than humans, their skin covered in dark scales that acted like armor. For years they had clashed with the Dravox Empire, seeking to claim border worlds. Now, they launched a sudden strike at a human colony, one that both humans and Dravox had promised to protect under their fragile alliance. The colony's distress call reached the outpost. "They will crush the settlers if we do not move," Tamash said during the briefing. His voice was calm, but his eyes were hard. "We leave at once." Lyra stood in the back of the room, listening. She was not ordered to join, but when Tamash saw her, he gave a small nod. You're with us. Her chest tightened. The convoy raid had been dangerous, but this was war. Still, she nodded. I will not run. The journey to the colony was tense. Transports carried squads of human soldiers across the stars, weapons ready, hearts steady. When they landed, smoke already filled the sky. Buildings burned. Families hid inside shelters. And in the distance, the Zirith advanced in heavy ranks, their scaled bodies glinting in the firelight. The humans formed lines quickly. Tomash gave orders, his voice steady, guiding his troops like a commander who had done this 100 times before. Lyra stayed close to him, her rifle ready. Her hands trembled at first, but she forced herself to breathe. Remember, Tomash told her, strength is not rushing forward. It is choosing the right moment. She nodded, repeating his words in her heart. The battle began. The ground shook as the Zirith charged. Their weapons fired bolts of burning energy, tearing through walls and scattering debris. Human soldiers returned fire, their formation tight. At first, Lyra stayed low, firing carefully. She hit some targets, missed others. Fear clawed at her chest, but she refused to let it control her. Then, in the chaos, she saw something that froze her blood. A group of Zirith had broken through on the right flank. They moved toward a shelter where colonists' unarmed men, women, and children were hiding. No one else saw it. The soldiers were locked in their own fights. Lyra's body moved before her mind could doubt. She sprinted across the field, dust and fire swirling around her. Shots flew past, but she kept running. The Zirith reached the shelter door, claws ready to tear it open. Lyra fired, striking one in the neck where the scales were thinner. The creature dropped. Another turned, roaring, rushing toward her. Her heart pounded. She remembered Tamash's lessons. Balance. Focus. Wait. She dodged aside, firing again. The second Zirith fell. The colonists inside the shelter stared in shock as the alien princess stood in front of them, protecting them like a shield. For the first time, their fear turned into hope. Back in the main fight, Tamash finally saw her. His heart tightened, but then he noticed how she moved, no longer frozen, no longer stumbling. She fought with purpose. She fought with fire. Hold the line, he shouted to the soldiers, then turned to cover her from afar. Lyra's actions changed the flow of the battle. Inspired by her bravery, soldiers on the right flank pushed harder, driving the Zirith back. Slowly, painfully, the humans gained ground. By nightfall, the colony was safe. The Zirith retreated, leaving their dead behind. Smoke still rose from broken buildings, but the settlers lived. The humans had won. In the aftermath, soldiers gathered, exhausted but alive. They spoke of many brave acts that day, but one story rose above the rest: the story of the alien princess who had defended the helpless and fought like a warrior. A young colonist, no older than 12, ran up to Lyra. His eyes were wide with admiration. "You saved us," he said softly. Lyra looked at him, her chest heavy with emotion. She had never been anyone's protector before. Slowly, she knelt so her eyes met his. "You are safe now," she said, her voice steady. The boy smiled, then ran back to his family. Tamash approached, dust and sweat covering him. He looked at her with quiet pride. "Today, you fought as one of us," he said. Lyra lowered her eyes, but this time it was not from shame. It was because she was holding back tears. "I only remembered your words," she whispered. "No," Tamash said firmly. "You remembered your own strength." Far away, in the Dravox palace, the alien king received news of the battle. His advisors hesitated as they told him the truth. Lyra had stood in combat, saved colonists, and even led soldiers by example. The king's face hardened. He did not believe. She is weak. Always weak, he said, his voice sharp. Yet, in his heart, a seed of doubt had been planted. That night, as Lyra sat beneath the stars of the colony world, she realized something new. She no longer fought only to prove herself. She fought because others needed her. And that, she thought, was a kind of strength her people had never taught her. Her fire had grown into a flame. And it was only the beginning. The colony was safe, but the memory of fire and smoke lingered long after the battle. Soldiers rebuilt walls, settlers repaired homes, and the outpost worked day and night to restore what had been lost. Yet in the middle of all this, something had changed. Lyra was no longer seen as the weak princess. Whispers of her courage spread quickly, how she had stood alone against the Zirith to protect colonists, how she had refused to run. For the first time, people spoke her name with respect instead of pity. But Lyra herself felt something deeper than respect. She had discovered a strength that was not only in her arms or in her rifle. It was in her heart. In the days after the battle, she visited the shelters often. Children ran to her when they saw her, clinging to her arms. Families offered her food in thanks. At first, she felt uncomfortable, not knowing how to respond to such open gratitude. But soon she realized that her presence gave them comfort. "You're different from the other warriors," one settler told her quietly. "You don't only fight. You care." The words stayed with her. Her people, the Dravox, had always taught that a warrior must never show weakness, never pause for the wounded, never pity those who could not fight. Strength, to them, was cold and unforgiving. But here, among humans, Lyra had seen soldiers risk their lives to save each other. She had seen Tamash carry a wounded man on his back through enemy fire. And she herself had felt the power of compassion when she stood before the shelter. Perhaps, she thought, her people had misunderstood what true strength was. One evening, as the sun dipped low, Lyra walked through the training grounds. Tamash was there, giving orders to a squad. When he dismissed them, he noticed her watching. "You've grown," he said with a small smile. "Not only in skill. In spirit." Lyra tilted her head. "Spirit? You fight with more than your hands," Tamash explained. "You fight with your heart. And that makes others follow you." She thought about his words. "My people believe the heart makes you weak." "Then they are wrong," Tamash said simply. "A heart that protects others is the strongest weapon of all." His words warmed her, but they also stirred confusion. What did it mean for her future? If her heart was now tied to the humans, could she still belong to her people? Back in the Dravox palace, her father, the alien king, grew restless. More reports arrived from the front. Some claimed that Lyra had become a symbol of courage among humans. Others said she inspired soldiers, fighting not only with skill but with kindness. The king frowned. To him, compassion was a weakness. Yet his advisors whispered that perhaps his daughter was becoming something greater than he ever expected. "Impossible," the king muttered. "She was born weak. Do not insult me with such stories." But deep inside, unease gnawed at him. Meanwhile, in the outpost, Lyra faced her own doubts. Soldiers now looked to her in moments of decision. Colonists thanked her with shining eyes. Even Tamash spoke of her as if she were no longer a student but an equal. But she still wondered, where did she truly belong? One night, unable to sleep, she walked outside the outpost walls. The stars stretched endlessly above her, silent and cold. She thought of her father's throne, of the empire she had left behind. She thought of Tamash and the humans who had become her family. "I am caught between two worlds," she whispered. Tamash appeared beside her, as if sensing her thoughts. He stood quietly for a moment before speaking. "Maybe you are not caught. Maybe you are the bridge." She turned to him, surprised. You carry the strength of your people, he said. And the compassion of mine. Together, they make something new. Something stronger than either alone. Lyra looked back at the stars. His words filled her with both hope and fear. If she was a bridge, what path would she choose? Days later, another mission tested her heart. A skirmish broke out on the border of the colony. Lyra led a small squad of soldiers to push back the Zereth raiders. The fight was fierce, dust and fire swirling around them. In the middle of battle, one soldier fell, trapped under debris. The logical choice was to leave him. Every second spent could cost the squad their lives. That was the Dravok's way. But Lyra refused. "Cover me," she shouted. She ran into the storm of fire, lifting the debris with all her strength. Her arms shook, her body screamed, but she refused to leave the soldier. With the help of two others, she pulled him free and dragged him back to safety. When the fight ended in victory, the soldier she saved whispered, "I owe you my life." Lyra only shook her head. "We owe each other. No one is left behind." The squad looked at her with new eyes. In that moment, she was no longer only the alien princess. She was their leader. Word of her compassion spread even faster than her victories. Soldiers spoke of how she refused to abandon the wounded. Colonists said she carried a heart stronger than steel. And slowly, even those who doubted her began to admire her. But admiration brought new dangers. In the shadows of the Dravok's empire, whispers grew louder. Some saw Lyra's rise as a threat to their traditions. Others feared she might change the future of their people. Lyra did not yet know it, but enemies within her own bloodline were beginning to plot against her. And soon, her heart would be tested not only by war, but by betrayal. The stars above the human outpost looked calm, but beneath that silence, storms of politics and jealousy brewed. Lyra had become a name whispered with respect among humans, and even some Dravok's warriors who had once mocked her now spoke of her courage. But respect from some created hatred in others. In the Dravok's empire, certain nobles saw her rise as dangerous. The princess was weak, one muttered in secret. Now humans speak of her as a hero. If she continues, she will change everything we believe. Another added, if she returns, the people may follow her instead of the king. Fear and pride twisted into a dark decision. A small faction of the king's own advisors plotted in silence. To them, Lyra was not hope, she was a threat. Lyra, unaware of the shadows forming against her, continued her training and missions. Yet, she sensed change in the air. The soldiers respected her, but she noticed how some of the supply ships from Dravok's brought fewer resources. Some messages from the Empire were colder, more distant. One evening, as she sparred with Tamash in the training field, she voiced her unease. "My father will not accept me," she said. "Even if I prove myself, he will see only weakness." Tamash lowered his staff, breathing steady. "Then do not fight for his acceptance," he said. "Fight for those who already believe in you. They are your family now." His words gave her strength, but they did not erase the shadow of doubt. The betrayal came sooner than she expected. A routine mission took her squad to secure a supply route near the border. The terrain was rocky, the path narrow. It should have been simple. But halfway through the canyon, hidden explosives tore the ground apart. The transport flipped, fire erupting. Raiders poured from the cliffs, but these were no ordinary raiders. Their weapons and armor were marked with Dravok's symbols. Lyra froze. "These are my people," she whispered. The ambush was brutal. Soldiers scrambled for cover as blaster fire rained down. Lyra pulled Tamash out from under wreckage, his arm bleeding from shrapnel. His face was pale, but his eyes were steady. "Go," he said, gritting his teeth. "Lead them." "I'll cover." "No," Lyra said firmly. "I will not leave you." She turned, rallying the remaining soldiers. Her voice cut through the chaos. "Hold your ground. Protect each other." They obeyed, not questioning. She moved through the fire like she had been born to command. Every shot she fired was precise. Every order kept another soldier alive. But the truth burned inside her: this was no random attack. Someone from her father's empire wanted her dead. Hours later, the survivors finally pushed the attackers back. The canyon was littered with smoke and rubble. Lyra knelt beside Tomasz, who was weak but alive. She tore strips of cloth to bandage his wounds, her hands shaking but determined. "You should have left me," Tomasz murmured, his voice low. "I told you," she whispered back, "no one is left behind." He managed a faint smile before his eyes closed in exhaustion. The squad carried the wounded back to the outpost. Word spread quickly: the ambush had been led by Dravok's soldiers, not raiders. Whispers of betrayal filled the camp. Some humans grew angry. Her own people tried to kill her, one shouted. Others looked to Lyra. What will she do now? Lyra stood before them, her heart heavy but her voice strong. "Yes, it was my people who did this. Not all of them, but those who fear change. They fear compassion. They fear strength that does not destroy but protects. They wanted me gone." She paused, her eyes sweeping over the soldiers. "But I am still here. And I will not bow to fear." The soldiers cheered, their voices echoing across the outpost. In that moment, Lyra was no longer only a princess. She was their leader. Far away, in the Dravok's palace, the alien king learned of the failed ambush. His face darkened as he realized what his advisors had done without his direct command. Though he still doubted Lyra's strength, he could not ignore the truth: she had survived what was meant to destroy her. "She grows stronger," he admitted quietly, though bitterness filled his voice. That night, in the quiet of the medical bay, Lyra sat beside Tomasz's bed. He stirred, opening his eyes. "You led them," he whispered. She nodded. "Because you taught me not to give up." Tomasz's gaze softened. "No," he said. "You led them because you are a leader. Not because of me. Because of you." Lyra's chest tightened with emotion. For so long, she had believed herself weak, shaped only by the hands of others. But now, she understood. She was not weak. She was strong, and her strength was her own. She looked out the window at the stars, her resolve hardening. The Empire may plot against her. Her father may doubt her. But she would not be silenced. She would fight not for a throne, but for a future where strength meant more than fear. Her fire was no longer just a flame. It was becoming a blaze. The human outpost was quiet at dawn. Smoke from past battles had faded, leaving only the scent of earth and metal. Lyra stood at the edge of the training field, looking up at the sky. Her hands were steady now, her heart strong. She had faced fear, betrayal, and fire and survived. Beside her, Tomasz adjusted his armor. He had recovered enough to stand, though his arm was still bandaged. He looked at her with quiet pride. "It's time," he said. "The Empire will know what you have become." Lyra nodded. For years, she had lived in the shadow of weakness. Now, she would return not as a gift, not as a pawn, but as a warrior in her own right. The journey back to the Dravok's empire was tense. Word of her deeds had spread ahead of her: the battles she had fought, the colonists she had saved, the humans who now admired her courage. Yet Lyra did not seek recognition. She only sought to face her father, to show him that she had grown stronger than anyone could imagine. When the towering gates of the palace came into view, whispers began among the guards. The princess who had been given away had returned. But she was not the fragile girl they remembered. Her armor was scratched but sturdy, her eyes sharp and unwavering. She carried herself like a warrior born of two worlds. The great hall awaited. The alien king sat on his throne, tall and imposing. His crown gleamed under the crystal lights. Yet when he saw Lyra step forward, he felt a shock ripple through him. "Father," Lyra said, her voice clear and firm, "I have returned." The king's advisors watched nervously. Some expected her to bow, to plead for forgiveness or favor. But Lyra did neither. She stood tall, hands at her sides, every inch a commander. "You were given to humans," the king said, his voice echoing in the hall. "And yet you have returned. Speak quickly, what has this life taught you?" Lyra held his gaze, unwavering. "I have learned that strength is not only in power or blood. Strength is in protecting others. Strength is in standing up when no one else will. And strength is in choosing your own path, not the one others force upon you." A hush fell over the hall. The king's eyes narrowed. He wanted to dismiss her words, to call them foolish. Yet deep inside, he could not. He saw it now, the courage in her stance, the fire in her eyes, the respect of the soldiers who had traveled with her now standing at the palace gates in secret to witness her return. "You are different," the king admitted, his voice low. "Perhaps I never understood you." "I am not the daughter you wanted," Lyra replied gently, "but I am the warrior I have chosen to be." Her words rippled through the empire. Whispers of admiration began, even among the nobles who had plotted against her. Some bowed their heads in respect. Others stared in disbelief. But no one could deny the truth: Lyra had transformed into a warrior of unmatched skill, courage, and heart. Tomasz stepped forward, standing beside her. "She is not only your daughter," he said calmly, "she is a bridge between our worlds. A warrior for both humans and Dravox." The king looked at the human beside his daughter. There was no mockery, no doubt, only recognition. He nodded slowly. "You have taught her well. Perhaps, we have all learned from you." In the following weeks, Lyra trained with both human and Dravox soldiers. She combined their tactics, their strategies, and their wisdom, teaching others that strength could be measured not only in power but also in courage and compassion. Soldiers looked to her not out of fear but out of admiration. Colonists sought her guidance. Even the alien king began to consult with her on matters of defense and diplomacy. Lyra had become a leader who inspired loyalty, not because of her bloodline, but because of her heart and deeds. She was no longer the weak daughter of a king, she was the warrior princess, a legend in the making. One night, as the twin moons of the empire shone over the palace, Lyra stood on a balcony beside Tomasz. The wind carried the scent of distant fields and forests. She looked out across the empire, thinking of the journey that had brought her here, the fear, the failures, the battles, the trust she had gained, and the friends who had stood by her side. Tomasz turned to her, smiling gently. "You've changed everything," he said. Lyra nodded. "Not just me. Perhaps the empire too. Maybe one day, no one will see weakness as the measure of a person." For the first time, she felt completely at peace. Her father, her people, the humans she had grown to love, all had seen her true self. And in that quiet moment, under the stars, she knew that her story was not just her own. It was a story of courage, of trust, of heart, and of the endless possibilities that could rise from strength and compassion combined. The weak princess was gone. In her place stood a warrior, fearless and fierce. And the galaxy would never forget her name.